Have you ever noticed some people never post their photos on social media? They scroll, they like, they watch, but you'll never see their face on your feed. Who are they really? What's going on in their mind? In a world where everyone is desperate to be seen, some choose to stay invisible. This audiobook explores the hidden psychology behind that choice, the confidence, the fear, the boundaries, and the mystery. You'll discover what their silence says about them, and maybe even something about yourself. So, if you've ever wondered why some people never post, or if you're one of them, you're about to find out. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to this channel for more deep, mind-opening audiobooks that change how you see people and yourself. Let's dive in. Chapter 1. Behind the Silence. Most people today live through screens. Every moment, breakfast, vacations, new clothes, even morning coffee gets captured, filtered, and shared online. For many, social media is the place where life happens. But there's another group, quieter and harder to notice. They scroll, they see, they think, but they never post. Their faces rarely appear online, and their personal lives stay private. In a world obsessed with sharing, they choose silence. But silence, in this case, speaks volumes. Why would someone avoid posting pictures of themselves? The answer isn't simple. It's not always about fear or shyness. Sometimes it's about control. Sometimes it's about peace. For some, not posting isn't a lack of confidence. It's a conscious choice to protect their identity, their energy, and their mind. People who don't post pictures often think differently about attention. They don't crave it the same way others do. They understand that attention can be addictive. The more likes you get, the more you want. It becomes a cycle: share, wait, refresh, repeat. But those who stay silent choose to break that cycle. They value something deeper than likes or views. They value authenticity, and they know not everything needs to be seen to be real. For some, social media feels like a stage. Everyone plays a role, posing, smiling, acting happy, but not everyone enjoys performing. Some people prefer the audience seat. They don't want to pretend or prove anything. They're comfortable in their skin, even when the world doesn't see it. This quiet confidence often comes from self-awareness. They don't need validation to know their worth. They live for themselves, not for the crowd. There's also another side. Those who don't post because they've been hurt before. Maybe they shared too much once, and people judged them. Maybe their privacy was broken, or their photos were misused. Experiences like that leave marks. Over time, they learn that keeping things to themselves feels safer. It's not fear, it's wisdom. It's the understanding that not everyone deserves access to their personal world. Some people don't post because they value their real connections more than digital ones. They'd rather talk face to face than text through a screen. They find meaning in moments that aren't recorded, in laughter that doesn't need to be shared, in stories told privately. For them, life's best memories don't belong to the internet. They belong to the heart. They understand that when you stop trying to capture every moment, you start to truly live it. There's also a deeper psychological reason. Social media, for many, triggers comparison. You see someone's highlight reel, their best photos, their happiest moments, and you compare it to your entire life. That comparison can lead to anxiety, self-doubt, and low self-esteem. People who don't post often understand this. They protect their mental health by stepping away from the constant need to measure up. They know that not everything online is real. Behind every perfect photo there might be stress, insecurity, or sadness. They choose not to join that game. Interestingly, people who don't post often have stronger boundaries. They understand where their private life ends and where the public world begins. They're selective about what they share and with whom. They value trust and they guard it carefully. This kind of discipline often reflects emotional maturity. They're not trying to impress, they're trying to stay true to themselves. But not everyone who avoids posting is peaceful or confident. For some, Silence hides fear. They worry about being judged or misunderstood. They fear rejection or embarrassment. Maybe they don't like how they look in photos. Maybe they've faced criticism before. These feelings can be powerful, and they can make someone retreat into silence. Yet, even this silence has meaning. It shows how deeply people care about acceptance and belonging. The fear of being seen is as human as the desire to be loved. There's also the cultural side. In some cultures, modesty is valued. People grow up being told not to show off, not to draw attention. For them, posting photos feels uncomfortable or unnecessary. Privacy is a part of their identity. They see it not as hiding, but as maintaining dignity. The digital world often clashes with that mindset, but they stay true to their roots. In psychology, there's a concept called self-presentation, the way people control how others see them. Some people like shaping their image online, carefully choosing what to show. Others simply don't care. People who don't post photos are often more focused on the real world than the digital one. They don't feel the need to manage how others see them. They'd rather spend their energy on who they actually are, not who others think they are. Interestingly, these people often observe more. They notice patterns others miss. They study people's behavior, moods, and energy online. They can sense when something is genuine and when it's fake. Their silence gives them perspective because they're not busy performing, they're busy understanding, and that awareness makes them emotionally intelligent. They don't need to speak loudly to be wise. Their silence can also be a form of resistance. In a world that constantly demands visibility, choosing not to post is an act of rebellion. It's saying, "I don't owe you my face." It's reclaiming control from the systems that profit from your data, your time, and your emotions. People who don't post are quietly saying no to that control. They protect their peace by staying offline or staying unseen. It's a quiet form of freedom. Another reason people stay silent online is because they're deeply content with their offline lives. They don't need the online world to validate their happiness. Their sense of fulfillment comes from experiences, not exposure. They might have a close circle of friends, a hobby they love, or a quiet routine that brings them joy. They don't feel the need to announce it. They're simply living. Some people also understand the permanence of the internet. Once something is shared online, it's there forever. Even if you delete it, it can still be found, copied, or saved. For those who value control over their image and privacy, that's unsettling. So, they choose not to post. It's not because they're hiding, it's because they're aware. They understand the power and the danger of digital footprints. There's also an element of mystery. People who don't post much often intrigue others. Their silence makes people curious. In a way, not posting becomes its own kind of presence. People wonder what they're doing, what they're like, how they think. This mystery gives them power. In a noisy world, quiet people stand out. They draw attention by not asking for it. Psychologically, this behavior can also connect to introversion. Introverts recharge through solitude and deep thinking. They don't feel comfortable constantly sharing. For them, posting photos feels draining rather than exciting. They prefer meaningful conversations over online validation. Their private world is rich, and they don't feel the need to display it. Still, not posting doesn't mean being antisocial. Many of these people are kind, engaging, and thoughtful. They just prefer different ways of connecting. They might enjoy long conversations, writing, or observing. Their quiet nature doesn't make them disconnected, it makes them deliberate. They know the difference between being visible and being present. They choose presence. If you look closer, you'll notice that people who don't post often have a strong sense of identity. They're not defined by trends or external approval. They move at their own pace. This kind of independence can be rare in the digital age. It shows maturity and confidence. They understand that self-worth isn't measured in likes or followers. It's built through growth, values, and real-life actions. There's a psychological peace that comes with staying private. When you stop performing, you stop comparing. When you stop sharing, you stop chasing approval. You find quiet joy in the ordinary. You begin to live for yourself, not for the audience. People who live this way often describe it as freedom, the freedom to be themselves without pressure. Yet, silence doesn't mean indifference. People who don't post often still care about others. They watch, they listen, they engage in their own way. They may send a message instead of a comment, or spend time offline connecting in person. They express care through action, not through posts. Their relationships may be fewer, but they're often deeper and more genuine. The psychology of those who don't post is not about one single reason. It's a blend of confidence, privacy, caution, and awareness. Each person's silence tells a story. Some are protecting peace, some are guarding wounds, some are simply choosing authenticity over attention. In the end, their choice reflects something powerful, the ability to live on their own terms in a world that constantly demands visibility. The next time you scroll through social media and notice someone who never posts, don't assume they're shy or hiding. They might just be living more fully than most. Their silence might not be emptiness, it might be strength. Because sometimes the loudest statement you can make is the choice to stay silent. Chapter 2: The Age of Exposure. We live in a time where showing yourself has become a kind of currency. Every photo, every post, every update is a small declaration that says, "I exist." Social media has turned visibility into validation. The more people see you, the more real you feel. The more likes you get, the more accepted you think you are. But what happens when someone chooses not to play that game? When they decide to stay unseen in a world obsessed with being seen? This is the age of exposure. Privacy has become rare, almost strange. People share their homes, their meals, their relationships, even their thoughts. The internet rewards openness, not silence. If you don't post, you're invisible. And yet, some people are okay with that. They don't want to trade their peace for attention. They don't want their face to become part of an endless feed of noise. There's a quiet kind of strength in not posting. It's the strength of being comfortable in your own skin, even when no one's watching. It's choosing to live life for yourself, not for an audience. In the age of exposure, this can feel like rebellion when everyone's racing to show more. Those who show less stand out. Their stillness becomes a statement. Their absence speaks louder than any photo could. For many people, social media has become a mirror. Every post reflects how they want the world to see them. But a mirror can also distort. It doesn't always show the truth. It shows what we want to believe about ourselves. We pose, we edit, we filter, and then we share. Over time, it's easy to lose track of where the real you ends and the online you begins. Those who avoid posting often understand this danger. They know that once you start performing for others, it's hard to stop. They choose to step away before that performance becomes their identity. There's also a hidden pressure that comes with exposure. The pressure to always look good, to seem happy, to stay relevant. It's exhausting. People who don't post have freed themselves from that weight. They don't feel the need to prove their worth through pictures or likes. Their confidence comes from something quieter and deeper, from self-acceptance. They don't need constant validation because they've already found peace within themselves. The psychology behind this choice runs deep. Humans are social creatures. We crave connection and belonging. But the digital world has changed how we seek those things. In the past, we built relationships through shared experiences, through time spent together. Now, connection often happens through screens. It's faster, louder, and more crowded, but not always more meaningful. People who don't post often crave a different kind of connection. They prefer depth over visibility. They'd rather be known by a few who truly see them than by thousands who only see their pictures. For many, social media creates an illusion of connection. You can have hundreds of friends or followers and still feel lonely. The people who don't post have often recognized this truth. They see how easy it is to confuse attention with affection or likes with love. They understand that a heart icon is not the same as a heartbeat, and so they protect their real-world relationships. They keep their best moments private, shared only with those who truly matter. In the age of exposure, privacy can feel like power. When everyone is showing everything, keeping something for yourself becomes sacred. People who don't post their photos are guarding that sacred space. It's not that they're hiding, it's that they're choosing. They're choosing what to share and what to keep. This control gives them freedom. They're not trapped by the algorithm or the opinions of others. They decide what the world gets to see. But there's also a paradox. In a world where visibility equals value, staying private can make people suspicious. Why don't you post, others might ask? What are you hiding? This kind of question reveals how deeply the culture of exposure has shaped our thinking. We've begun to believe that not sharing is strange, that privacy equals secrecy, but for many, it's the opposite. Privacy isn't about hiding, it's about protecting. It's about keeping what's real safe from what's temporary. There's also a deeper emotional truth here. People who don't post are often more grounded. They don't chase trends or attention. Their self-worth isn't tied to their online image. They're not constantly comparing their lives to others. This mental freedom allows them to experience life more fully. They notice details, the way sunlight falls on a wall, the sound of laughter in a room, the quiet beauty of moments that don't need to be captured. While others are busy taking photos, they're busy living. For some, though, not posting is a form of healing. Maybe they once shared too much. Maybe they opened themselves up online and were met with judgment, criticism, or betrayal. That kind of experience can make anyone retreat. Their silence becomes a form of self-care. It's a way of reclaiming control, of saying, I choose who gets to see me now. This withdrawal isn't weakness, it's wisdom born from pain. There's also the role of anxiety. Posting a photo might seem simple, but for some, it brings a wave of overthinking. What if people don't like it? What if they judge me? What if no one cares? The pressure to be perfect online can trigger deep insecurities. By not posting, some people are protecting their mental health. They don't want to enter that endless loop of doubt and comparison. They'd rather stay invisible than anxious. But for others, the reason is simpler. They just don't care. They don't see the point of constantly sharing. They live for real experiences, not virtual applause. They see posting as a distraction, something that pulls them away from the present moment. When they're with friends, they're fully there. When they travel, they see the world through their eyes, not through a lens. Their memories are stored in their hearts, not on their profiles. The age of exposure has made people believe that visibility equals importance, but that's not true. Some of the most powerful people are the ones who move quietly. They influence not through noise, but through presence. People who don't post their photos often have this quiet influence. Their words, their energy, and their actions speak louder than any image could. They inspire others to slow down, to reflect, to breathe. There's a beauty in mystery. When you don't reveal everything, you leave room for imagination. The people who stay silent online create curiosity. Others wonder what they're doing, what they're thinking, what their life is like. That mystery is magnetic. It draws people in without effort. In a way, their silence becomes their voice. Still, this doesn't mean that posting is bad or wrong. For many, sharing online is a form of expression, creativity, and connection. But this chapter isn't about them. It's about those who choose differently. Those who find peace in privacy. Their choice isn't about judgment, it's about balance. They remind us that we don't have to share everything to live fully. Social media has made exposure feel normal, but for thousands of years before this, humans lived without broadcasting their lives. They found meaning in private moments, in family, in community. The people who don't post are keeping that tradition alive in a digital world. They remind us that the essence of being human isn't found in screens, it's found in silence, in presence, in being truly alive. The age of exposure is loud. It demands attention, rewards visibility, and punishes stillness. But those who stay silent are not lost. They are grounded. They are choosing to live differently, to protect their inner world from the noise. They're proving that in a world obsessed with being seen, the real power lies in being at peace when no one is looking. They might never post a photo, but they're still living a story worth telling, a story that unfolds quietly, beautifully, and privately, away from the endless scroll. And maybe, just maybe, they've figured out something the rest of the world has forgotten. That the most meaningful moments in life are the ones that don't need to be shared. Chapter 3. The Hidden World of Privacy. Privacy used to be something everyone had. Before the internet, before smartphones, people lived their lives quietly. The only people who saw your photos were your family, your friends, maybe the people in your neighborhood. But today, privacy feels like a luxury. Every moment can be shared, every secret can be told, and every face can appear on a screen. Yet, in the middle of all this noise, there are still people who protect their privacy like a treasure. They don't post their photos, they don't share their daily lives, and they don't let everyone in. To some, this might seem strange. But for them, privacy is peace. There's a quiet beauty in being unknown. When you don't share everything, you keep a part of yourself that belongs only to you. People who value privacy understand this deeply. They know that once something is shared online, it's no longer just theirs. It belongs to the internet, to the audience, to strangers they'll never meet. And that thought doesn't sit well with them. They prefer the comfort of being unseen. They find joy in moments that no one else knows about. A walk in the morning sun, a favorite song, a private smile. These are their treasures. Psychologically, privacy gives people control. It creates a boundary between the self and the world. Without that boundary, the world feels too close, too loud, too demanding. The people who don't post their photos are building that boundary with care. They decide who gets to see them, who gets to know them, and who doesn't. In a way, this control gives them freedom. They're not constantly adjusting themselves to fit others' expectations. They don't have to wonder what people think of their pictures or their choices. They're free to be authentic because no one is watching. Privacy is also about safety, emotional, mental, and sometimes even physical. When you share too much online, you expose yourself to opinions, judgments, and even risks. The internet can be kind, but it can also be cruel. People comment without thinking. They criticize, compare, and sometimes attack. Those who stay private protect themselves from that storm. It's not that they're afraid, it's that they're wise. They understand that not everyone deserves access to their lives. Protecting their privacy isn't about hiding, it's about self-respect. Many people who value privacy describe it as calm. There's less noise, less drama, less need for approval. They don't wake up wondering what to post. They don't measure their days in likes or views. They move quietly, focused on what truly matters. This kind of life creates mental clarity. Their minds aren't crowded with digital feedback. They can think deeply, feel fully, and live honestly. Their private moments become their source of strength. For some, privacy comes from past experiences. Maybe they once shared too much and got hurt. Maybe their trust was broken, or someone used their openness against them. These moments leave scars. After that, they learn to protect themselves by keeping things private. It's not bitterness, it's self-protection. It's learning that not everyone is kind, and that peace often comes from staying quiet. Over time, privacy becomes a form of healing, a way to rebuild trust in the world slowly, carefully, on their own terms. There's also something deeply psychological about the desire to remain private. People who value privacy often have a strong sense of self. They don't need to be seen to feel real. They don't rely on others to define their worth. This independence comes from inner confidence. It's quiet, steady, and self-sustaining. They know who they are, and that's enough. They don't need a digital mirror to prove it. In the world of psychology, privacy is linked to identity formation. To understand who you are, you need space to think, reflect, and feel without interruption. Constant sharing interrupts that process. When you post every thought, every photo, every moment, you start to shape your identity around how others respond. You begin to live for reactions instead of reflection. People who stay private give themselves that space to grow naturally, without external pressure. They allow themselves to change, to make mistakes, to evolve, away from public judgment. Privacy also brings emotional safety. When you don't share everything, you keep your emotions close to your heart. You choose who gets to hear your stories and who doesn't. This selective sharing builds intimacy. When someone who values privacy decides to open up to you, it's meaningful. It means trust. Because they don't share easily, what they do share becomes more real, more personal. In a way, privacy gives relationships depth. It filters out the noise and leaves only what's true. But living privately in a public world isn't always easy. People often misunderstand those who don't post. They might think they're hiding something, or that they're antisocial, but the truth is, they just live differently. Their fulfillment comes from within, not from public approval. They're not disconnected from the world, they're just connected differently. They prefer quiet spaces, real conversations, and genuine moments. They don't need a digital audience to feel alive. Some people associate privacy with loneliness, but they're not the same. Loneliness is the absence of connection. Privacy is the presence of boundaries. People who value privacy often have deep, meaningful connections. They might not have hundreds of friends, but the few they do have matter deeply. Their relationships are built on trust, not visibility. They know that being seen by everyone isn't the same as being understood by someone. There's also a spiritual side to privacy. Many people who live privately describe feeling more grounded, more peaceful. They see privacy as sacred, a space where their thoughts, emotions, and energy belong only to them. They use that space to think, to dream, to heal. In a noisy world, this silence becomes their sanctuary. It's where they recharge, where they rediscover themselves. Interestingly, the desire for privacy often grows with self-awareness. The more you understand yourself, the less you feel the need to explain yourself to others. You realize that not everyone needs to know your story, and that your worth doesn't depend on being visible. You begin to value quiet over validation. You stop performing and start existing. This transformation often happens gradually as people mature emotionally. They realize that real happiness doesn't need an audience. In contrast, the constant exposure of social media can make people anxious. Studies have shown that overexposure increases stress and insecurity. People begin to worry about how they look, how they're perceived, whether they're keeping up. But those who choose privacy are free from that cycle. They don't need to compare because they're not competing. Their energy is spent on living, not performing. Privacy also allows for creativity. When no one's watching, you can experiment, make mistakes, and explore new ideas. You can think without pressure. Many writers, artists, and thinkers protect their private lives for this reason. They understand that creativity thrives in solitude. Silence gives birth to ideas. When your mind isn't filled with noise, inspiration flows more freely. For some, not posting is the ultimate creative act. It's keeping something pure, untouched by outside opinions. People who stay private also tend to observe more. They notice what others miss. The tone of a voice, the change in someone's eyes, the emotions behind the words, because they're not busy sharing, they're busy understanding. This awareness makes them empathetic and emotionally intelligent. They don't need to speak loudly. Their understanding speaks for them. But privacy is not about isolation. It's about choice. It's choosing who gets access to your world and who doesn't. It's choosing to protect your peace. The people who don't post their photos have simply decided that their personal life is not for public consumption. They share with intention, not impulse. They know that oversharing can lead to regret, while thoughtful silence leads to strength. In many ways, privacy is the art of living unseen, but fully alive. It's knowing that the best parts of your life don't need to be displayed to have value. It's realizing that your moments are precious because they're yours, not because they're liked or shared. In a culture that rewards exposure, people who choose privacy are quietly redefining what it means to be free. Maybe the world will one day return to this understanding that not everything needs to be posted, that some things are meant to be experienced, not shared. Until then, those who live privately will continue to remind us of something beautiful, that there's power in being unknown, strength in being quiet, and peace in being yourself, without the need for an audience. Chapter 4. When silence becomes power. Silence is often misunderstood. Most people think silence means weakness or fear, but that's not true. Sometimes silence is strength. Sometimes it's the most powerful voice a person can have. People who don't post their photos online often understand this in a way others don't. They've learned that silence doesn't mean absence. It means control. In a world that rewards noise, being quiet is a bold choice. Everyone is trying to speak louder, to post more, to be noticed. But those who stay silent move differently. They don't compete for attention. They let their actions speak for them. They know that real strength doesn't need to be announced. It's felt. It's seen through calmness, through confidence that doesn't need approval. Silence is not emptiness. It's awareness. It's knowing when to speak and when to stay still. People who stay silent online often live more deliberately. They don't feel the pressure to react to everything. They don't rush to prove their opinion. They observe, they think, they choose their words carefully, and when they do speak, people listen. Their words carry more weight because they aren't lost in the noise. This is the quiet power of restraint. In psychology, restraint shows maturity. It means you can manage your impulses, your emotions, and your need for attention. It's the ability to choose peace over performance. People who don't post their photos often have this restraint. They're not cold or distant. They're selective. They don't give away their energy easily. They understand that not every moment needs to be shared and not every thought needs to be said. Silence also protects identity. When you keep parts of your life private, you remain mysterious, and mystery is powerful. It draws curiosity. People wonder who you are, what you think, what you're doing. In a world where everyone reveals everything, mystery becomes rare. It makes you memorable without even trying. The people who post less understand this power. Their absence becomes their presence. Some might see silence as disconnection, but that's not true. Silence is often a sign of focus. People who stay quiet online are often deeply connected to the real world. They're paying attention to their surroundings, to the people they love, to their own thought. They aren't distracted by constant updates or endless scrolling. Their focus gives them clarity. They live more fully because they're not always performing. Silence can also be emotional strength. It's easy to react. It's easy to post, to rant, to argue. It takes much more strength to hold back, to process, to respond thoughtfully, or not at all. People who practice silence are not passive. They're patient. They understand timing. They know that not every thought deserves a stage, and not every emotion deserves an audience. They deal with their feelings privately, which often makes them emotionally stronger than those who constantly seek public validation. There's a quiet confidence that comes from not needing to be seen. It's the confidence of someone who knows their worth without proof. They don't need the approval of strangers to feel secure. Their validation comes from within. This kind of confidence is rare in the digital age, where so many people tie their self-worth to likes and comments. The quiet ones have stepped outside that system. They define their value on their own terms. Silence is also a form of protection from judgment. The more you share, the more people feel entitled to have opinions about your life. They'll comment, compare, and criticize. But when you share less, you give them less to control. You keep your story in your hand. You decide what people know about you. That's power, the power of ownership over your own image. In history, silence has often been a tool for reflection and strength. Leaders, philosophers, and artists have used silence to think deeply. They understood that wisdom doesn't come from constant talking, it comes from observation, from stillness. The same applies to today's quiet people. Their silence gives them insight. They notice patterns others miss. They sense moods and motives. Their awareness is sharper because they're not distracted by constant expression. Psychologically, silence helps the mind reset. When you're always talking or posting, your brain doesn't get time to rest. You're always reacting, always comparing. But silence allows mental space. It gives you time to think, to breathe, to understand. People who stay silent online often have a better sense of themselves. They know what they want, what they believe, and who they are. Silence gives them that clarity. But silence isn't always comfortable. For many people, silence feels like emptiness. It forces them to face themselves, to sit with their thoughts. That's why so many people avoid it. They fill the silence with noise, posts, and distractions. But those who embrace silence are often the ones who've made peace with themselves. They don't fear their thoughts. They explore them. They've turned silence into a tool for growth. There's also power in unpredictability. When you're quiet, people can't easily read you. They can't predict your next move or control your narrative. This gives you freedom. You move at your own pace, make decisions privately, and reveal what you want when you want. Silence becomes strategy. It keeps your power intact because no one knows everything about you. Even in relationships, silence can be powerful. The quiet people are often great listeners. They don't interrupt. They don't talk over others. They absorb what's being said. This makes them compassionate and wise. People trust them because they feel heard. In a world where everyone wants to talk, the one who listens holds the real influence. There's also a different kind of silence, the digital kind. People who don't post much are not antisocial. They're just choosing quality over quantity. They might message privately, meet in person, or share thoughts one-on-one. They believe in real communication, not performance. Their silence online doesn't mean silence in life. It means authenticity in connection. For some, silence becomes a form of rebellion. The digital world demands noise, constant updates, constant visibility. When you stay silent, you're saying no to that demand. You're choosing peace over pressure. You're reclaiming your time and attention from systems designed to keep you scrolling. Silence then becomes resistance, a quiet refusal to be consumed. It's also worth noting that silence changes how others perceive you. People often respect the ones who don't talk too much. They seem composed, thoughtful, and confident. Their words carry more meaning because they're rare. When they speak, it matters. Their silence builds anticipation. It creates presence without effort. In psychology, this is linked to the scarcity effect. The idea that when something is rare, it becomes more valuable. The same goes for silence. When you share less, your words and actions carry more weight. You become more respected because people know you don't speak carelessly. You've mastered the art of saying less, but meaning more. Silence also creates space for observation. People who don't post often see more. They understand patterns in behavior, both online and offline. They can tell when someone's being authentic and when they're not. This awareness makes them wiser in social situations. They understand people deeply because they've spent time watching instead of talking. But the greatest power of silence might be peace. When you stop chasing validation, you find calm. You no longer need to perform or pretend. You don't compare your life to others, you live it. You find satisfaction in simple things, time with loved ones, personal growth, quiet moments of joy. The absence of noise becomes the presence of peace. Some people fear that being silent will make them irrelevant, but that's not true. The most powerful people aren't always the loudest, they're the most consistent. They move quietly, but their impact lasts. They don't need to announce their every step because their results speak for them. People who stay silent understand this. They're not in a hurry to be seen. They're busy building something worth seeing later. Silence doesn't mean disconnection. It means intention. It means choosing what truly matters. In a world where everyone's shouting, the quiet ones are the ones who truly hear. They see what others miss. They understand that power doesn't always come from expression. It comes from awareness, control, and peace. So when you see someone who doesn't post their photos, don't mistake their silence for absence. Their quiet might be the sound of focus, of confidence, of strength. They've learned that silence is not the absence of power, it's its purest form. And while the world scrolls endlessly, chasing the next post, they've already found something far more valuable. Peace in being unseen, power in being still, and strength in knowing that they don't need to be loud to be heard. Chapter 5. Living Beyond the Lens. For most people, the camera has become a mirror. Every meal, every outfit, every smile needs to be captured and shared. The moment doesn't feel real until it's seen by others. But there's another kind of person, someone who lives quietly, without needing proof. They don't reach for their phone when something beautiful happens. They simply live it. They don't post their faces online, not because they're hiding, but because they're free. They've learned how to live beyond the lens. Life beyond the lens feels different. It's slower, calmer, more present. When you're not trying to capture everything, you begin to notice what's real. The sound of rain on your window, the smell of coffee in the morning, the laughter of someone you love. These small things become deeper when they aren't interrupted by a screen. People who live beyond the lens value experience over evidence. They don't need photos to remember moments. They carry them inside. There's a special kind of peace that comes from not performing. When you stop thinking about how something will look online, you start feeling it fully. You stop worrying about angles, filters, or likes. You just exist. This is what people who don't post their photos understand. They know that life is more beautiful when it's not constantly documented. They live for the moment, not for the memory card. Psychologically, this kind of living reduces stress. Studies show that people who are constantly on social media feel more anxious. They compare themselves to others. They fear missing out. They chase attention and lose focus on what really matters. But those who live beyond the lens escape that cycle. They find satisfaction in simplicity. Their joy doesn't depend on reactions. It grows from within. Every moment becomes their own, untouched by judgment or expectation. There's something powerful about being invisible in a world obsessed with attention. It takes confidence to say, I don't need to show this. Confidence to know that your happiness doesn't need an audience. People who live beyond the lens carry that quiet confidence with them. They walk through life with self-assurance. They aren't worried about proving anything. They don't need applause because they already know who they are. But this doesn't mean they're disconnected. In fact, they often feel more connected to nature, to people, to themselves. Without the distraction of constant sharing, their relationships deepen. When they talk to someone, they really listen. When they laugh freely. Their moments are not performances, they're experiences. The people around them feel it too. There's something refreshing about being with someone who doesn't see the world through a screen. In a world full of cameras, not posting is an act of freedom. The lens often changes how people behave. When a camera's on, people smile differently. They speak differently. They even act differently. Over time, the performance becomes habit. People forget who they are without the lens watching. But those who choose not to live through the camera never lose that connection to themselves. They remain real, raw, and authentic. There's also a spiritual side to living beyond the lens. When you stop trying to capture every moment, you start living in gratitude. You see the beauty in things you used to ignore, the way light falls across your floor, the way the sky changes color at dusk, the small, sacred details that disappear when you're too busy taking photos. These moments remind you that life isn't about how things look, it's about how they feel. People who don't post their photos understand that not every moment is meant to be shared. Some are meant to be kept. They keep their happiness private, their sadness personal, their growth sacred. This privacy gives meaning to their lives. They don't need to prove they're happy. They just are. They find power in that quiet truth. Living beyond the lens also teaches you patience. When you're not constantly distracted by notifications, you start to slow down. You learn to wait, to breathe, to be still. You start to appreciate the rhythm of life, the ups and downs, the pauses and starts. You no longer need to rush to share everything. You trust that the best moments don't need an audience. There's another layer to this psychology, self-worth. When you stop seeking validation online, you start finding it inside yourself. The people who don't post often have stronger self-esteem. Their value doesn't rise or fall with numbers on a screen. They build confidence through actions, not attention. They work on their skills, their dreams, their relationships. Their growth is quiet but steady, and when they win, it's real. The digital world rewards visibility, but not necessarily truth. People post the best parts of their lives and hide the rest. But life isn't perfect. It's messy, complicated, emotional. People who live beyond the lens accept that they don't edit their lives. They live them. They understand that imperfections make life beautiful. They're not afraid of being unseen because they know that realness doesn't always photograph well. Living this way can sometimes make others curious. Friends might ask, "Why don't you post?" Or "Why are you so quiet online?" But for them, silence is not strange. It's natural. They see life as something to experience, not display. They know that if every moment is shared, some moments lose their meaning. What makes a sunset special is not the photo of it, but the feeling of standing under that fading light. Living beyond the lens also improves focus. Without the distraction of social media, your mind stays clear. You can read, learn, and think deeply. You can pursue passions without the noise of comparison. This clarity often leads to better creativity and stronger purpose. When you stop looking at what everyone else is doing, you start discovering what you truly want. The quiet gives space for your ideas to grow. There's also something healing about being unseen. When you step back from the camera, you stop worrying about how others see you. You stop fixing yourself for approval. You begin to like yourself for who you are, not how you look in a frame. You stop being a performer and become a person again. This healing runs deep. It restores your confidence and brings peace to your mind. People who live beyond the lens often find joy in simplicity. A cup of tea, a conversation, a walk outside. They understand that happiness doesn't have to be glamorous. It can be quiet. It can be ordinary. The absence of constant performance allows them to feel content with what they have. This simplicity makes life richer, because when you stop trying to impress, you start to feel grateful. For some, this way of living is a reaction to burnout. They've seen what happens when you share too much, how it drains you, how it turns joy into content. They've realized that some experiences lose their magic once they're posted, so they choose differently. They choose presence over performance. They'd rather live a memory than broadcast it. There's also wisdom in understanding that once something is online, you lose control of it. Photos can be saved, copied, or misused. Words can be twisted. People who live privately know this. They value their image too much to give it away. They want to be the author of their own story, not a character in someone else's feed. Their restraint is a sign of strength. Living beyond the lens isn't about rejecting technology. It's about using it mindfully. It's about remembering that the screen is a tool, not a life. The people who don't post often still use social media, but with purpose. They watch, they learn, they connect, but they don't let it control them. They understand the balance between being online and being alive. Sometimes, the people who post the least are the ones who live the most. They're busy exploring, creating, loving, growing. Their energy goes into living, not displaying. And when they look back on their memories, they don't see pixels, they feel emotions. Their lives may not be public, but they're full. Their joy may not be visible, but it's real. Living beyond the lens is not about being invisible. It's about being free. Free from judgment, free from performance, free from the pressure to be perfect. It's about choosing peace over popularity, meaning over metrics, presence over presentation. It's about living a life that feels good, even if no one's watching. In the end, the people who live beyond the lens teach us something powerful. They remind us that we don't need an audience to have a life worth living, that our happiest moments don't need to be posted, that the best memories are the ones we keep in our hearts, and that sometimes the most beautiful thing you can do is simply live and let the world wonder. Chapter 6. Confidence without an audience. Confidence is often misunderstood. Many people think confidence means showing off, being loud, or standing in the spotlight, but true confidence is quieter than that. It's the calm knowing that you are enough, even when no one is watching. For the people who don't post their photos online, confidence doesn't come from attention. It comes from self-understanding. It's the strength of being comfortable in your own skin, without needing others to confirm it. When you scroll through social media, it's easy to believe that the loudest people are the most confident. You see bright smiles, fancy outfits, and perfect poses. But behind many of those pictures, there's uncertainty. There's a constant need for reassurance. Every like and comment becomes a small dose of approval. Over time, it turns into a habit, one that's hard to break. For those who choose silence, that habit never starts. Their confidence grows from within, not from the crowd. Confidence without an audience feels different. It doesn't shout. It doesn't seek validation. It stands steady, like a quiet flame that doesn't need wind to burn. People who don't post their photos often have this kind of self-assurance. They know their worth isn't tied to a profile or a picture. They've built it through experiences, through mistakes, through self-reflection. Their confidence isn't about being seen, it's about being secure. True confidence doesn't need applause. It's the ability to walk into a room and not need to prove anything. It's smiling without needing a camera. It's achieving something without broadcasting it. The people who don't post understand that the best moments in life often don't fit into a frame. They know that validation fades, but self-respect lasts. Confidence like this grows from self-awareness. It comes from knowing your strengths and your weaknesses. It's not pretending to be perfect. It's accepting yourself fully. People who are quietly confident don't chase perfection. They embrace growth. They know they'll make mistakes, but they trust themselves to recover. Their belief in themselves is steady because it's built on truth, not performance. Many people feel pressure to prove they're doing well. They post achievements, vacations, smiles, all to show they're happy. But the people who don't post don't feel that pressure. They understand that happiness is personal. It's not something that needs to be displayed. Their joy is real because it's private. They live it instead of performing it. Psychologically, this quiet confidence comes from internal validation. External validation, likes, comments, attention, depends on others. It can disappear at any moment. Internal validation, however, comes from self-belief. It's the ability to say, "I'm proud of myself," even if no one else notices. People who rely on internal validation are emotionally stronger. They don't crumble when they're ignored or criticized. They trust their own voice more than the noise around them. Confidence without an audience is powerful because it's stable. It doesn't depend on trends or attention. It doesn't disappear when the spotlight fades. It grows with time, with experience, with reflection. It's the kind of confidence that shows up in quiet actions, doing your work well, helping others, standing by your values. It's the kind that doesn't need recognition to be real. There's also humility in this kind of confidence. When you don't need to prove yourself, you become more grounded. You stop comparing your life to others. You celebrate your wins quietly, and you learn from your failures privately. You understand that confidence isn't about being better than others. It's about being at peace with yourself. Some people think that those who don't post are shy or insecure, but often it's the opposite. It takes courage to stay unseen in a world that rewards visibility. It takes strength to say, "I don't need to show this." Their silence isn't insecurity, it's self-control. They know that what's real doesn't need to be advertised. They trust themselves enough to live without applause. Confidence without an audience also allows deeper focus. When you stop performing, you have more energy to improve yourself. People who stay private often spend their time learning, practicing, and growing. They build skills instead of chasing attention. They work quietly until their results speak for them. Their progress isn't visible online, but it's visible in their lives. Their confidence comes from knowing they're getting better every day, not from showing it. There's peace in knowing that you don't have to prove anything. When you stop chasing validation, your mind becomes clear. You start doing things because they matter to you, not because they'll impress someone else. This kind of peace makes confidence stronger. It becomes unshakable because it's rooted in authenticity. People who don't post their photos often have stronger emotional independence. They don't depend on others to make them feel good. They take responsibility for their emotions. They know that self-worth isn't something others can give, it's something you build. This independence makes them more resilient. They can handle setbacks without falling apart. They can face criticism without losing themselves. They're grounded in who they are. Confidence without an audience also comes from living honestly. When you're not performing, you don't need to hide behind filters or fake smiles. You can be real. You can admit when you're tired, when you're unsure, when you're human. This honesty builds inner peace. People who live this way don't waste energy pretending. They use that energy to grow. There's a quiet elegance in people who are confident but humble. You can sense it in the way they move, the way they speak, the calm in their presence. They don't demand attention, but they attract it naturally. Their authenticity draws people in because it's rare. In a world full of noise, their calm feels magnetic. Sometimes, the most confident person in the room is the one who says the least. They don't interrupt. They don't compete to be heard. They listen, they observe, they understand. This kind of confidence comes from knowing that your value isn't tied to volume. You don't need to shout to be strong. You just need to stand firm in who you are. Quiet confidence is also contagious. When others see someone who's secure without needing attention, they feel inspired. It gives them permission to be themselves too. It reminds them that it's okay not to share everything, that self-worth doesn't depend on visibility. The world needs more of that kind of strength, calm, grounded, real. There's a line between confidence and ego. Ego says, "Look at me." Confidence says, "I'm enough." Ego is loud, confidence is peaceful. The people who don't post their photos often live on the side of peace. They don't need to compete or compare. They focus on growth, not applause. Their success is quiet but meaningful. Living this way changes how you see the world. You stop judging others by what they show. You start noticing what can't be seen, the kindness in someone's tone, the depth in their thoughts, the peace in their presence. You realize that real beauty isn't captured by cameras. It's in the way someone lives, the way they treat others, the way they carry themselves when no one's watching. Confidence without an audience is freedom. Freedom from pressure, from comparison, from performance. It's living for yourself, not for approval. It's choosing self-trust over self-promotion. And in a world that constantly asks you to prove yourself, that freedom is rare and powerful. So when someone chooses to stay private, don't mistake it for insecurity. Their silence may be the sound of confidence. Their calm may be the mark of strength. They've found something many people are still searching for: peace in being unseen, and confidence that doesn't need to be posted. Chapter 7. The Art of Quiet Growth. Growth doesn't always make noise. It doesn't always look exciting. It doesn't always need to be shared. Sometimes growth is invisible, slow, private, and deeply personal. It happens in quiet rooms, late at night, when no one's watching. It happens in moments of reflection, in failure, in patience. The people who don't post their photos often understand this truth. They've learned that real growth doesn't need an audience. In today's world, progress is often measured by visibility. If you're doing something good, people expect to see it. If you're improving, they want proof. But true growth isn't about showing, it's about becoming. It's about who you are when the camera is off, when the likes stop, when no one's clapping. Quiet growth happens in the space between who you were and who you're becoming, and it's one of the most powerful things a person can experience. People who live privately often grow in silence because they understand the value of peace. When you're not trying to prove anything, your energy goes into learning, not performing. You make progress because you're focused, not distracted. You don't have to worry about what others think. You just move forward, one small step at a time. This slow, steady kind of growth lasts longer because it's built on intention, not attention. Quiet growth often begins with self-awareness. It's about noticing your own patterns, understanding your emotions, and being honest about what needs to change. It's not about becoming perfect, it's about becoming better. People who don't post their photos spend more time looking inward than outward. They use silence to understand themselves. They reflect, they question, they adjust. This inner work doesn't make headlines, but it changes lives. There's also patience in quiet growth. In a world obsessed with instant results, people forget that real change takes time. The ones who grow in silence aren't in a rush. They understand that every small improvement matters. They plant seeds, water them, and wait. They don't need recognition to stay motivated. Their drive comes from within. And when the results finally show, it feels natural because they've been working for it quietly all along. One of the most beautiful parts of private growth is how peaceful it feels. When you're not competing or comparing, growth becomes joyful. You start enjoying the process instead of chasing the outcome. You celebrate small wins. You learn from setbacks. You don't get distracted by what others are doing. Your focus is on your own path, and that focus brings clarity, strength, and peace. Psychologically, this kind of growth builds confidence and resilience. When you achieve something privately, you learn to trust yourself. You realize that you don't need public approval to validate your effort. You become your own motivator. You begin to see mistakes not as failures but as lessons. This mindset creates a foundation for long-term success, quiet, steady, and strong. Quiet growth also teaches humility. When you grow in private, you don't feel the need to announce it. You don't seek praise. You understand that progress is personal. It's not for display. You become more grounded, more understanding of others. You realize that everyone's journey is different, and not all growth can be seen. This humility gives you grace. It makes you kind, patient, and wise. For many people, the reason they stay silent online is because they're working on themselves offline. They're healing from old wounds, building better habits, learning new skills. Their silence is not absence, it's transformation. They're focused on becoming, not broadcasting, and that kind of focus changes everything. When they finally reappear, if they ever do, they're stronger, calmer, and more self-assured. Growth in silence also protects you from unnecessary pressure. When you share your goals publicly, you invite opinions, expectations, and sometimes even judgment. People start watching, waiting for you to succeed or fail. But when you grow privately, the only person you have to answer to is yourself. You can make mistakes, change direction, and start over without fear. You can evolve freely, without the weight of an audience. There's also beauty in surprising people. When you work quietly and then show your results, it catches others off guard. They didn't see the struggle, the effort, the practice, but they see the outcome. It's not about showing off, it's about proving that real progress doesn't need to be public. The best results often come from quiet seasons of unseen work. Quiet growth is also deeply healing. When you stop rushing to show progress, you give yourself time to feel it. You can process your emotions, understand your setbacks, and truly appreciate how far you've come. The growth becomes personal. It's not about how it looks, but how it feels. People who live this way often say they feel lighter, calmer, more fulfilled. Their success isn't loud, but it's genuine. Many people fear that if they don't show their progress, it won't be valued. But the truth is, the right people will see it eventually, and even if they don't, it still matters. Because growth isn't a performance, it's a transformation. The reward isn't attention, it's peace. It's knowing you've become a better version of yourself, even if no one notices. The people who grow quietly are often the ones who surprise the world later. They're the ones who show up one day confident, capable, and changed. People wonder, when did that happen? It happened in silence. It happened in nights of hard work, in moments of doubt, in lessons learned without applause. Quiet growth may not be seen, but it's always felt. There's a deep confidence that comes from private progress. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to prove anything. You know what you've done, and that's enough. This kind of confidence doesn't fade. It builds over time. It's the kind that carries you through challenges because it's based on truth, not perception. Quiet growth also allows space for gratitude. When you're not distracted by attention, you start noticing small blessings. You appreciate how far you've come, even if no one else knows. Gratitude keeps you grounded. It reminds you that growth isn't about reaching a finish line, it's about learning along the way. The people who grow in silence often radiate peace because they're thankful, not restless. The art of quiet growth is really the art of patience, faith, and consistency. It's trusting that your effort matters, even when no one sees it. It's believing in yourself enough to keep going without recognition. It's knowing that every small step forward adds up, and it's accepting that growth isn't always visible, but it's always happening. The truth is, not everything beautiful needs to be shared. Flowers bloom quietly. The sun rises without a sound. Growth happens in silence all around us. The same is true for people. The ones who don't post their photos, who live privately, are often the ones growing the most. They're working on themselves, building their futures, and finding peace in the process. Quiet growth is not slow. It's steady. It's not empty. It's full of purpose. It may not be visible to others, but it transforms everything inside you. Because the most powerful changes don't need to be seen. They just need to be lived. Chapter 8. The freedom of being unseen. There is a quiet kind of freedom that comes from being unseen. It's not the freedom of hiding, it's the freedom of not needing to be noticed. It's the calm that comes when you no longer measure your worth by who's watching. In a world where visibility is treated like currency, choosing to be unseen feels like rebellion. But for those who live this way, it's not rebellion, it's peace. People who don't post their photos online understand this freedom better than most. They live without the constant need to prove, to show, to explain. They aren't trapped by the expectations of an audience. Their lives belong to them, not to their followers. This sense of ownership over their identity is powerful. They decide what the world gets to see and what it doesn't. That control isn't isolation, it's independence. Being unseen allows a person to breathe differently. When you're not performing for others, your movements become natural, your smile is real, your words are honest, and your moments are pure. You stop worrying about how things look and start focusing on how they feel. You live in the moment instead of capturing it. People who choose to stay unseen often describe it as peace that feels like coming home to yourself. There's something deeply human about wanting to be seen. We all want to be understood, to be acknowledged. But there's a difference between being seen and being watched. Being seen means being understood for who you truly are. Being watched means being judged for what you show. The people who stay unseen have chosen the first over the second. They'd rather be known deeply by a few than watched superficially by many. This kind of freedom creates space for authenticity. When no one is watching, you can finally be yourself. You don't have to pose, edit, or filter. You can be raw, messy, real. You can laugh too loud, cry when you need to, fail, and start over. There's no pressure to look perfect. People who live this way often grow faster emotionally because they're not afraid of imperfection. They allow themselves to be human. Being unseen also means being harder to define. When you don't constantly share, people can't easily label you. They don't know your every move or thought. You become a mystery in a world that overshares. That mystery isn't emptiness, it's strength. It protects your inner world from outside noise. It gives you the freedom to change, to evolve, without explanation. You can reinvent yourself quietly, as many times as you need, without anyone keeping score. There's also less pressure to compare. When you're not online, trying to match everyone's highlight reel, you stop feeling behind. You realize that life isn't a race. You begin to move at your own pace, following your own rhythm. The people who live unseen are often more content. They measure progress by peace, not popularity. They understand that true success isn't how many people know you, it's how at ease you are with yourself. Psychologically, being unseen can help reduce anxiety and stress. Social media creates constant awareness of others' opinions. Even if no one says anything bad, the idea of being judged can weigh heavily. Every photo, every post, every caption becomes a performance. People who stay unseen don't carry that weight. They're free from the silent pressure of validation. Their happiness isn't built on feedback, it's built on inner peace. This freedom also nurtures creativity. When you're not afraid of judgment, your mind opens up. You take risks, you try new things, you make art, write, explore, fail, and try again. People who live unseen often find creative freedom because they're not performing for an audience. They don't worry about what people will think. They just create for the joy of it. Their work is honest, because it's not edited for approval. There's something timeless about living unseen. Before social media, this was normal. People lived quietly, fully, without needing constant recognition. The world has changed, but the desire for peace hasn't. The people who stay unseen are keeping that old truth alive, that life is meant to be lived, not broadcasted. They remind us that privacy isn't a loss, it's a form of strength. Being unseen also means protecting what's sacred. When everything is shared, even the most special things lose their magic. A private life, on the other hand, keeps meaning intact. A relationship feels stronger when it's not performed. A memory feels deeper when it belongs only to you. People who don't post often protect these small sacred spaces. They keep love private, success quiet, and happiness personal. Their lives might look empty online, but they're full where it matters. Sometimes being unseen is an act of healing. After too much exposure or too many disappointments, people retreat into silence to find themselves again. They take back their time, their attention, their energy. This silence helps them reset. They rebuild confidence, trust, and clarity. They learn who they are without the noise of opinions, and when they're ready, they re-emerge, not to be seen, but to live freely again. Freedom also comes from not having to explain yourself. When you're always visible, people think they have the right to your story. They ask questions, make judgments, and form opinions. But when you stay unseen, your story belongs to you. You get to decide when and if it's shared. That kind of control creates emotional security. It gives you peace knowing that not everyone has access to your life. People who live unseen often find deeper meaning in solitude. They're not afraid of being alone because they're comfortable with their thoughts. They use silence to think, dream, and grow. They don't need constant stimulation. Their inner world is rich, filled with imagination, reflection, and peace. Solitude, for them, isn't emptiness, it's strength. It's the place where they find direction and purpose. There's also power in being unpredictable. When you share everything, people know what to expect from you. But when you don't, you become mysterious. That mystery commands quiet respect. People wonder, not because you're hiding, but because you're selective. Your silence creates curiosity, and your privacy builds presence. It's an unspoken power that needs no explanation. Living unseen also teaches humility. When you're not performing, you stop needing applause. You learn to do things for yourself, to read, to work, to grow, without needing anyone to notice. This humility doesn't make you smaller, it makes you wiser. It keeps your focus on what truly matters, becoming a better person, not a more visible one. The freedom of being unseen is also the freedom to fail privately. When you don't share every step, you can make mistakes without pressure. You can try again without embarrassment. You can start over without everyone watching. This freedom gives people courage. It helps them take risks, learn new things, and keep going. Growth feels easier when it's not performed. There's peace in not needing to announce your happiness. When joy is quiet, it becomes stronger. You don't waste energy proving it. You simply feel it. You learn that happiness doesn't need witnesses, it just needs truth. The people who live unseen understand this kind of happiness. It's steady, grounded, and real. To live unseen is not to disappear, it's to live intentionally. It's choosing what deserves your energy and what doesn't. It's walking away from noise and finding peace in your own company. It's remembering that your value doesn't depend on how much you're seen, but on how deeply you live. There's a certain beauty in walking through life without needing to be noticed. It's the beauty of freedom. The freedom to think clearly, love deeply, and live quietly. The freedom to be yourself without performing. The freedom to exist, not as a brand or a profile, but as a person, real, flawed, and whole. The people who don't post their photos aren't running from attention, they're running toward peace. They've chosen the freedom of being unseen because they've learned something the world often forgets, that you don't need to be visible to be valuable. You just need to be true to yourself, and sometimes the quietest life is the one that's most fully lived. Chapter 9. The depth of disconnection. Disconnection is a word that often sounds negative. People use it to describe loneliness, isolation, or being cut off from the world. But sometimes, disconnection is exactly what a person needs to find peace again. In a world that is always connected, where notifications never stop and attention is constantly demanded, disconnecting can be healing. It can be a form of strength. For people who don't post their photos on social media, this quiet disconnection is often not loneliness, it's balance. Many people fear silence. They fear being forgotten. So they post, they share, they talk. They want to make sure they're seen. that they exist in the digital crowd. But the more connected they become online, the less connected they often feel in real life. The conversations get shorter, the attention gets thinner, and the emotions get smaller. The people who choose to disconnect see through that emptiness. They've learned that being constantly online doesn't mean being truly connected. Real connection happens face to face, heart to heart, not through likes or comments. The choice to disconnect is a choice to slow down. It's choosing stillness over speed, meaning over noise. When you step back from social media, you start to see how fast everything moves. People rush to share, to react, to consume. But the quiet ones take a different path. They pause, they think, they breathe. In that pause, life begins to feel real again. Meals taste better, conversations last longer, and moments feel deeper. Disconnection brings you back to the present. There's a kind of depth that only silence can give. When you're not constantly consuming information, your mind starts to clear. You begin to think your own thoughts instead of repeating what you've read online. You rediscover curiosity. You start to wonder about things again. You notice details you used to ignore, the color of the sky, the rhythm of your steps, the tone of someone's voice. These small human moments return when you're not distracted by screens. People who disconnect aren't cutting themselves off from the world, they're reconnecting to it. Disconnection also builds emotional strength. Social media feeds can be overwhelming. There's pressure to keep up, to compare, to compete. Every scroll brings someone else's success, beauty, or happiness into your view. And even if you know it's filtered, it still affects you. The quiet people know this. They understand that constant exposure to others' lives can drain your confidence and distort your peace. So they step away, not because they hate people, but because they love themselves enough to protect their mind. Being disconnected also gives space for reflection. When you're always plugged in, your thoughts get interrupted. You start to think in short bursts. Scroll, react, repeat. But reflection needs silence. It needs time. People who live disconnected lives often describe how their thoughts become deeper, how they begin to understand themselves more. They think about what really matters. They set better goals. They listen to their emotions instead of silencing them with noise. Disconnection creates room for self-discovery. There's also something freeing about not needing to update anyone. When you're constantly posting, there's an invisible pressure to keep your life interesting. But when you disconnect, that pressure disappears. You can rest. You can have boring days, lazy moments, or times when you're figuring things out. And it's okay. You don't have to explain yourself. You can live quietly without needing approval. That kind of freedom is rare in a connected world. Psychologically, humans aren't built for endless stimulation. Our minds need downtime to reset. That's why people who disconnect often feel calmer and more focused. They sleep better. They feel less anxious. They think more clearly. They become more creative. Their attention returns to the things that truly matter. Their passions, their loved ones, their dreams. The silence that once felt strange begins to feel like home. There's also a special kind of connection that grows out of disconnection. When you're not always online, your real-life relationships start to deepen. You talk more, you listen more, you show up more. The conversations become real, not rehearsed. You laugh without worrying about taking a picture. You enjoy time with people instead of proving you were there. These moments can't be captured, they can only be felt. But disconnection isn't always easy. The first few days can feel uncomfortable. You might reach for your phone out of habit. You might feel like you're missing something. That's normal. We've been trained to seek constant updates. But if you stay patient, that feeling fades. Slowly, peace replaces anxiety. You realize that nothing important was ever happening on your screen. It's happening in your life. The quiet becomes comforting. You start to crave it. For people who never post their photos, this balance comes naturally. They've learned that not every thought needs to be shared, and not every face needs to be seen. They're not addicted to being visible, they're content with being present. This self-control creates strength. It allows them to live by their own rhythm, not the world's. Their sense of peace doesn't depend on technology, it depends on awareness. Disconnection can also protect creativity and privacy. When you stop performing for others, your imagination starts to grow. You think for yourself again. You dream without limits. You create because you love it, not because you want likes. Many artists, writers, and thinkers choose disconnection for this reason. They understand that creativity grows best in quiet soil. The noise of attention can kill inspiration, but silence makes it bloom. Some people worry that disconnecting means being out of touch, but the truth is, it makes you more in touch with reality. You start seeing people as they are, not as they appear online. You notice the way they speak, how they move, what makes them happy. These real moments remind you that humanity is richer than anything a screen can show. You begin to live more honestly, and you realize how much you were missing before. The depth of disconnection is not emptiness, it's presence. It's the deep breath after noise. It's the peace that comes when you stop chasing and start being. People who live this way are often misunderstood. Others think they're distant, uninterested, or shy, but really they're just at peace. They've chosen to focus on what matters most, and they don't need to prove that choice to anyone. In a world that moves so fast, disconnection slows you down just enough to see clearly. It helps you notice the difference between what's urgent and what's important. It reminds you that your worth isn't measured by your online presence, but by the way you live, love, and give. It teaches you that silence isn't a void, it's a mirror. It reflects who you are, without the filters. When you choose to disconnect, you're not disappearing, you're returning. Returning to your thoughts, to your peace, to your real life. You're giving yourself permission to live beyond the noise, and in that quiet something powerful happens. You rediscover your own rhythm. You remember what it feels like to be fully alive, without needing to be seen. The depth of disconnection is not isolation, it's rediscovery. It's remembering that the most important connections in life aren't made through screens, but through presence. They're made when you look someone in the eyes, when you listen without distraction, when you sit in silence and feel content. People who live this way aren't disconnected from the world, they're connected to it more deeply than most. So the next time you see someone who doesn't post, don't assume they're missing out. They might just be living in a way that the rest of the world has forgotten. They might be savoring moments that can't be photographed. They might be at peace with being unseen. Because sometimes the deepest connection begins the moment you disconnect. Chapter 10. Peace over popularity. Most people want to be liked. It's natural. From childhood, we crave approval, first from our parents, then from friends, then from society. But somewhere along the way, the need to be liked turned into the need to be noticed. Social media made that feeling stronger. Now, being visible feels like being valuable, but there's a quiet group of people who have stepped away from that game. They've chosen peace over popularity. They understand that being known is not the same as being happy. Popularity looks bright on the surface. The likes, the followers, the attention, it all feels good for a moment, but it fades quickly. You have to keep feeding it. One post leads to another, one compliment leads to a craving for more. It becomes a cycle that never ends. The people who don't post their photos have learned how to break that cycle. They don't chase attention, they chase balance. They've discovered that peace lasts longer than applause. Choosing peace over popularity means knowing what matters. It's realizing that your mental health, your time, and your privacy are worth more than digital approval. It's understanding that not every moment needs an audience. The people who choose this path aren't running from attention. They're walking toward freedom. They value calm mornings over constant checking. They value presence over performance. This kind of choice comes from maturity. It takes time to learn that attention doesn't equal love. You can be famous online and still feel invisible inside. You can have thousands of followers and still have no one to talk to when you're sad. The people who choose peace understand that real connection isn't built through posts, it's built through presence. They'd rather have 3 real friends than 3,000 followers. There's a saying, popularity is when people like you. Peace is when you like yourself. That's the difference. When you chase popularity, your happiness depends on others. You need their approval to feel good. But when you choose peace, you become enough for yourself. You stop performing and start living. Your worth doesn't rise and fall with the opinions of strangers. The psychology behind this is simple. The human brain releases dopamine when we get likes or positive feedback. It's the same chemical that reacts to rewards or excitement. But like any quick high, it doesn't last. You need more and more to feel the same satisfaction. People who avoid this loop are protecting their peace. They don't need validation because they've learned to validate themselves. Their sense of worth comes from what they do, not who sees it. When you choose peace, life starts to slow down. The noise fades. You begin to notice small joys again. The sound of rain, the taste of food, the rhythm of your own breathing. These moments don't make headlines, but they make life meaningful. People who don't post their photos are often deeply in touch with these details. They don't trade real experiences for digital attention. They live their days with quiet satisfaction. Peace also changes the way you handle stress. Popularity brings pressure. The pressure to stay relevant, to keep up, to never fade. It's exhausting. The moment you stop posting, people forget. The ones who choose peace understand this truth and accept it. They don't need to stay in the spotlight because their joy isn't tied to it. They find strength in being okay with being forgotten. That's real confidence, the kind that doesn't depend on attention. Choosing peace over popularity also builds authenticity. When you're not chasing trends, you can finally be yourself. You don't have to act, pose, or please. You don't have to pretend your life is perfect. You can have bad days, quiet moments, and still feel whole. People who live this way attract real relationships because they're genuine. Their honesty feels refreshing in a world of filters. This doesn't mean they don't care about people. It means they've redefined connection. They don't need everyone to like them. They just need a few who truly understand them. That's the beauty of peace. It narrows your circle, but deepens your bond. You begin to value quality over quantity in every area of life. Friends, work, love, and time. Many people confuse popularity with purpose. They think being known means being meaningful, but purpose doesn't need an audience. It grows quietly through actions, through persistence, through kindness. The people who choose peace focus on purpose. They work behind the scenes. They help others without posting about it. They learn, build, and grow, not for attention, but for fulfillment. Their impact is silent, but real. There's also a spiritual layer to peace. When you stop chasing attention, you begin to hear yourself again. You listen to your thoughts, your feelings, your intuition. You stop drowning in noise and start finding your inner rhythm. This inner calm brings clarity. You start to know what you want and what you don't. The people who don't post their photos often have this quiet clarity. They know who they are without needing mirrors made of screens. Choosing peace also gives you the courage to say no. No to unnecessary comparisons. No to fake friendships. No to the constant race for attention. Every no becomes a doorway to freedom. It protects your time and your energy. You stop explaining yourself to people who don't understand you. You stop forcing yourself to be visible, just to feel worthy. Popularity may bring eyes, but peace brings rest. Popularity may bring excitement, but peace brings contentment. One is loud and temporary. The other is quiet and lasting. People who choose peace know that what's calm often lasts longer than what's popular. They'd rather be steady than spectacular. In relationships, peace changes everything. When you stop performing, your connections become more honest. You no longer seek people who make you look good. You seek people who make you feel good. You stop needing validation from others because you've already found it inside. This kind of peace doesn't just make you calm, it makes you strong. There's also courage in choosing peace. It's easy to follow the crowd, to do what everyone else does. It's harder to stand still and say, I'm okay where I am. The people who choose peace have this quiet bravery. They walk their own path, even if it's not popular. They don't need to prove they're happy. They simply are. When you start valuing peace, your priorities shift. You stop chasing things that don't matter. You care less about being liked and more about being kind. You care less about being noticed and more about being present. You stop competing with others and start collaborating. You stop reacting and start reflecting. This is where true maturity begins. The peace-first mindset also changes how you see success. Success stops being about fame or numbers. It becomes about fulfillment, balance, and growth. You begin to measure life not by how loud it is, but by how real it feels. People who live this way often describe their days as simple but full. They don't need much to feel content. They've found joy in the quiet. Sometimes, choosing peace means losing people. When you stop performing, not everyone understands. Some drift away. That's okay. Peace has a way of filtering your circle. The ones who stay are the ones who truly belong. You stop chasing love and start attracting it naturally. You realize that the right people don't need to see you online. To value you, they feel your presence in real life. The people who don't post their photos aren't invisible. They just shine differently. Their light doesn't flash. It glows. It's steady, warm, and real. They may not be the loudest in the room, but they're often the most peaceful. Their calm speaks louder than attention ever could. Popularity fades, but peace endures. The world forgets quickly, but peace stays with you. It sits quietly beside you on lonely days. It helps you sleep at night. It reminds you that you don't need to be seen to be whole. That's the kind of strength no platform can give, and no crowd can take away. So when you see someone who lives quietly, who doesn't post, who chooses simplicity over show, understand this. They're not behind. They're ahead. They've found what many are still searching for. They've chosen peace over popularity, and in that choice, they've already won. Chapter 11. Protecting the private self. There is a part of every person that the world will never see. It's the quiet part, the private self. It's made of memories, fears, thoughts, and dreams that live deep inside. It's the version of you that exists when no one's watching. Protecting that part of yourself is one of the most powerful things you can do. And that's what people who don't post their photos have learned to do. They've chosen to protect their private self in a world that wants to expose everything. Social media teaches us to share. It tells us that every meal, every trip, every emotion should be shown. But the more we share, the less we keep for ourselves. Bit by bit, privacy fades. The private self starts to shrink. Soon, we start performing, even when we're alone. We begin to see ourselves through other people's eyes. That's when we lose touch with who we really are. The people who choose privacy are protecting that connection. They're keeping their true self safe from the noise. Privacy isn't about secrets. It's about boundaries. It's about deciding what belongs to you and what you're willing to give away. People who protect their private selves understand this difference. They know that not everything has to be shared to be real. A feeling doesn't need an audience. A memory doesn't need a photo. Some things are more beautiful when they're just yours. Protecting the private self begins with self-awareness. It's knowing what makes you feel comfortable and what drains you. It's realizing that you don't owe the world access to your thoughts, your body, or your emotions. You get to choose what you reveal. You get to decide what stays sacred. People who don't post their photos often carry this wisdom quietly. They don't need to prove anything. They simply know where their lines are, and they honor them. There's also emotional protection in privacy. When you share too much, you open the door to judgment, misunderstanding, and criticism. People can twist your words, misread your tone, or make assumptions about your life. But when you protect your private self, you control your story. You don't give others the power to define you. You live without fear of being misunderstood. That kind of peace is priceless. Protecting your private self doesn't mean closing off. It means choosing who gets access. The people who live this way still connect deeply, but selectively. They share their real stories with people who have earned their trust. Their relationships are stronger because they're built on truth, not display. They give their attention to a few instead of stretching it thin for many. This creates real intimacy, not digital imitation. Psychologically, privacy supports identity. When you keep parts of yourself private, you have space to grow and change. You can penetrate, fail, learn, and evolve without pressure. You can try new things without everyone watching. This freedom allows you to become your authentic self. People who share everything too early often get trapped by their own image. They feel forced to live up to the version they created online. But those who protect their private self can reinvent freely. They stay real because they're not performing for anyone. Protecting the private self also strengthens confidence. When you stop needing constant validation, you begin to trust yourself. You stop asking, "What will people think?" and start asking, "What do I think?" This shift is powerful. It takes you from dependence to independence. The people who live this way don't need approval. They have self-respect. Their validation comes from within. There's also a kind of magic in mystery. When you keep parts of yourself unseen, you create depth. People wonder about you, not because you're hiding, but because you're complete. Mystery gives people room to imagine. It also gives you room to breathe. You're not defined by others' opinions. You exist beyond their expectations. That mystery is confidence wrapped in silence. In relationships, protecting your private self keeps love pure. When two people share everything online, they often forget to keep some parts just for each other. The best relationships grow in privacy. They don't need to prove they're real. They don't need likes or comments. The connection itself is enough. People who live privately understand this. They protect their relationships like they protect their peace, carefully and quietly. Privacy also helps with healing. When you're going through something difficult, sharing it publicly can make the pain heavier. Opinions pour in, and not all of them are kind. But when you keep some pain private, you give yourself space to heal without noise. You process your feelings at your own pace. You learn your lessons quietly, and one day when you've healed, your strength speaks louder than any post ever could. The private self is where creativity begins. It's the part of you that dreams freely without judgment. When you protect it, you allow your imagination to thrive. You can write, paint, or think without worrying about reaction. You can create just for the joy of it. People who keep their lives private often have deep creative energy because they live unfiltered. Their minds are free from comparison and distraction. They think deeply, feel deeply, and express honestly. Protecting your private self also builds emotional boundaries. It helps you separate your inner world from public noise. You stop absorbing every opinion and start trusting your own. You stop letting strangers' words affect your peace. This boundary is essential for mental health. It allows you to stay calm in chaos, to think clearly in confusion, and to love yourself even when others don't understand you. There's a strength in knowing that not everyone deserves access to you. Your time, your emotions, your energy, they're precious. The people who live quietly understand this truth. They don't overshare because they know that exposure isn't the same as connection. They protect their presence like it's sacred. They invest in people and places that nourish them, not drain them. Sometimes, protecting your private self means being misunderstood. People may call you distant, mysterious, or even cold. But that's okay. You don't owe explanation to everyone. Your peace is more important than their opinion. Over time, you realize that the right people will understand your silence. They'll see that your privacy isn't pride, it's peace. There's a deep maturity in knowing what parts of your life are for you alone. When you stop broadcasting everything, life starts to feel more personal again. You taste it, feel it, live it. You stop turning moments into content. You stop rushing to prove you're happy. Instead, you actually are. That's the power of protecting your private self. It brings you back to authenticity. In a world obsessed with oversharing, privacy becomes power. It's the quiet kind of power that doesn't need to shout. It's the kind that grows stronger the more you protect it. People who live privately aren't afraid of being unseen. They've simply realized that their peace is worth more than attention. They've learned that the private self, the unposted, unfiltered, unseen part, is where the soul truly lives. Protecting your private self doesn't mean you disappear from the world. It means you move through it with intention. You show what you choose, you give what you want, and you keep the rest safe. You stop being an open book for everyone to read. You become a story that only a few truly know, and that makes it precious. The private self is like a garden. When it's exposed too much, it withers. But when it's cared for quietly, it flourishes. Protecting it is an act of self-love. It's saying, I matter enough to keep some parts of me for me. It's remembering that not every beautiful thing needs to be seen to be real. Some of the most beautiful things grow in silence. So when someone chooses not to post, not to share, not to perform, it's not because they have nothing to show. It's because they're protecting something sacred, their peace, their growth, their truth. They're protecting the private self, and in doing so, they're living more deeply than the world could ever see. Chapter 12, The Power of Silence. Silence is not emptiness. It is strength, peace and awareness. It is the space where thoughts grow clear and emotions calm down. For many people, silence feels uncomfortable because they have forgotten how to sit with it. They fill every quiet moment with sound, with scrolling, with updates. But the people who don't post their photos have learned to live in silence. They've discovered that silence isn't loneliness, it's power. There is a certain kind of strength in saying nothing when the world wants you to say everything. It takes courage to stay still when everyone else is shouting for attention. But in that stillness, something magical happens. You begin to hear your own voice again. You start understanding yourself without the need for an audience. That's the power of silence. It reconnects you to who you really are. When life is noisy, silence feels strange. But once you get used to it, you start to crave it. Silence becomes your home, your teacher, your healer. It teaches patience. It helps you see what truly matters. It gives your mind room to breathe. People who live quietly, who don't post their photos, often describe how peaceful their days feel. They move through life at their own pace. They're not rushing to share, they're busy experiencing. Silence also brings clarity. When you stop reacting to everything around you, you start to understand things more deeply. You see patterns. You notice how certain people or habits make you feel. You learn what brings you joy and what drains you. Without the noise of constant opinions, you finally have space to think. That's why the people who value silence often make wise decisions. They listen before they speak, think before they act, and reflect before they respond. In silence, you also rediscover your emotions. When you're not constantly distracted, you begin to feel again. You feel your sadness fully, your joy deeply, your love honestly. Silence doesn't numb, it awakens. It helps you process pain, appreciate peace, and grow stronger. Many people fear silence because it reveals what they've been running from. But those who embrace it learn to heal. They let silence do its quiet work inside them. There's a deep psychological truth in this. Silence regulates your nervous system. It reduces stress, clears the mind, and restores balance. When you're constantly exposed to social media, your brain is overstimulated. You compare, you judge, you react, and that wears you out. But in silence, your body relaxes, your mind slows down, you start to feel human again. The people who choose not to post are often calmer, more grounded, and more focused because they live in that quiet space. Silence also builds self-control. When you resist the urge to post, to comment, to prove something, you gain power over your impulses. You learn restraint. You stop reacting instantly and start responding intentionally. This kind of discipline gives you peace. It keeps your emotions steady even when the world feels chaotic. People who master silence often carry an aura of calm. They don't get pulled into drama or noise. They know their energy is precious, and they protect it. The power of silence shows in relationships too. When you listen more than you speak, you connect more deeply. People who live quietly tend to be good listeners. They don't interrupt. They don't compete for attention. They make others feel heard. Their silence creates space for honesty. In a world where everyone wants to be seen, they make others feel seen. That's a rare and beautiful gift. Silence also gives your words meaning. When you don't talk all the time, people pay attention when you do. Your voice carries weight because it's not used carelessly. Those who live with silence understand that words are powerful, and once spoken, they can't be taken back. So they choose their words carefully. They speak with purpose, not for attention. That kind of communication feels honest, strong, and wise. There's beauty in a quiet presence. You've probably met someone who doesn't say much, but still changes the energy in a room. Their calm speaks louder than words. That's the power of silence. It communicates without speaking. It draws respect without effort. It inspires without performing. People who live this way become anchors in a noisy world. Their stillness reminds others to slow down. In the digital age, silence is rare. Everyone feels the pressure to stay visible. If you're not posting, it feels like you've disappeared. But the people who value silence know that disappearing isn't the same as being gone. They're just choosing where to exist. They don't need to be everywhere, they just need to be at peace. Their silence is not absence, it's presence in its purest form. Silence also nurtures creativity. When your mind is quiet, ideas begin to form. Inspiration comes softly, without force. Many great thinkers, writers, and artists create their best work in silence. It's in that still space where imagination breathes. The people who don't post their photos often spend more time creating than consuming. They use silence as fuel. It helps them focus, dream, and build something meaningful. There's a quiet wisdom that grows from solitude. When you spend time alone without distraction, you start to know yourself deeply. You realize what you value, what you fear, and what you want from life. Silence helps you see the truth about yourself. It strips away the noise, the comparisons, the pressure. What's left is honesty, and from that honesty, strength begins. Sometimes, silence is misunderstood. People think being quiet means being weak or uninterested. But the truth is, silence often hides depth. It hides understanding, empathy, and peace. The ones who stay silent are often the ones observing, learning, and growing. They don't need to react. They already understand. Their strength comes from patience, not from performance. Choosing silence in a loud world is like choosing sanity. It's like turning down the volume on chaos. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care wisely. You pick your battles, you protect your peace, you speak when it matters, and stay silent when it doesn't. People who live this way conserve their energy for what truly deserves it. That's emotional intelligence in action. Silence also brings dignity. When you stop explaining yourself to everyone, you gain power. You realize that not every opinion needs a response. Not every comment deserves your energy. The people who don't post their photos often carry this quiet dignity. They're not hiding, they're choosing. They know that true confidence doesn't need to announce itself. In many ways, silence is the highest form of communication. It says, I don't need to prove myself. It says, I'm at peace with who I am. That's why the people who value silence seem calm even in storms. They've learned that noise doesn't solve problems. Clarity does. And clarity comes only in quiet. The power of silence lies in its simplicity. It's not dramatic or showy. It's soft but strong. Invisible but undeniable. It's the pause between words, the breath between thoughts, the peace between moments. It's where you find your strength when the world gets too loud. It's where you remember that you don't need attention to exist, you just need awareness. When you live in silence, you start to understand the rhythm of life. You stop rushing, you stop forcing, you let things unfold naturally. You begin to trust time, trust growth, trust yourself. That's what the people who don't post their photos have found. They've discovered that the quiet path is not empty. It's full of depth, peace and meaning. Silence is not about closing off from the world. It's about listening to it differently. It's about finding the balance between expression and reflection. It's about being present without needing to perform. And in that balance lies freedom. The freedom to live without noise. The freedom to feel without fear. The freedom to simply be. At the end of the day, the people who live in silence are not missing out. They're tuning in. They're hearing things others can't. They're feeling things others overlook. They're living in a way that doesn't need to be seen to be real. Their silence is not emptiness, it's wisdom, peace and strength, woven into every moment. So if you ever feel pressured to post, to speak, to be visible, remember this: you don't owe the world access to your every moment. You can keep some parts of your life sacred. You can protect your peace. You can live quietly and still live fully. The power of silence isn't about what the world sees. It's about what you feel when the noise fades away. The quiet people have figured out something many are still chasing. They found peace in presence, confidence in privacy, and freedom in silence. And maybe that's the most powerful thing of all: to live deeply, love quietly, and let your silence speak louder than any post ever could.